In this world, only a few people can clearly hear the voice from their hearts, and only a few can live by listening to their hearts, but such people either become madmen or become legends. At the beginning of the 20th century, Colonel William, a U.S. cavalryman, was tired of the killings of Indians by white people. In order to avoid the war, Colonel took his old Indian subordinate pet to herd and live in seclusion in the vast Montana prairie, living a self-sufficient life without fighting against the world. Ordinary life. Colonel has 3 sons. Alfred, the eldest, is mature, worldly, and gentle. Samuel, the third, is innocent and idealistic, and Tristan, the second, is wild, romantic, and spontaneous, and in Alfred's words, not as well educated as a dog. However, whether it is Colonel or Pet, their favorite is Tristan. Pet has taught Tristan the joy of hunting. Since he was a child, when a hunter takes out the heart of a prey, he should hold it in his hand so that the soul of the prey can be released. Pet once thought that it would be difficult for Tristan to live a long life. When he was born, his mother Isabel almost died because of him. He naturally loves to take risks. That night, Tristan went to the depths of the jungle alone. Tristan was injured, but he gained a trophy. Both his father and Pet looked at him approvingly. Life on the grassland was tiring, bitter and cold. The children's mother was born in a noble family, but because she could not bear the barbaric life, in the company of wild beasts, she chose to leave her husband and children and return to the city. However, the couple has maintained a close correspondence. In 1913, Dear Isabel, I'm not stupid enough to want to change my life, but I'm afraid I won't be able to raise my children in this wasteland. I'm just a veteran in training. How much do I know about them? Dear William, you have always been too responsible. Children will have their own way. They are willful, but can we blame them for being willful? I have good news. Samuel met Susanna at Harvard University and the two are engaged. They will go back to Montana to meet his brothers. I hope you can be as kind as possible so that Susanna can feel more of the warmth of family. Her parents died when she was a child, and her relationship is fragile. I think she feels quite alone in the world, but now she has found a new home, hasn't she? Colonel took it very seriously, and led his eldest son Alfred to welcome her in person. The group of people were talking and laughing amid the long white clouds, the majestic sky, the luxuriant grass, and the gentle breeze. Susanna was full of curiosity about this wilderness. Suddenly, a young man came out of the forest, riding a war horse and carrying a record of victory. Susanna's bright eyes twinkled. Tristan was completely different from his brother, and unlike most men in the world. Tristan welcomed Susanna with his fiery eyes. After greetings, the family returned home talking and laughing. Montana's prairies may seem inviting, but most visitors are repelled by their desolation. Everyone thought that Susanna would have difficulty adapting, but she was able to learn everything from riding a horse to herding animals to carrying a gun and shooting at targets, and she enjoyed it. This family, which has been missing a hostess for a long time, has regained the long-lost upbringing and warmth because of Susanna's arrival. After dinner, Susanna played the piano and Samuel sang. Alfred and Tristan listened quietly and watched the peaceful picture of the 3 sons in the same room. Colonel was satisfied. He was grateful to the Lord for his gift. Similarly, Susanna also found the missing warmth in this family, and the 3 brothers also had the only photo together. Samuel and Alfred were always by her side, playing games or chatting, for fear that she would be left out, and Samuel was even more worried that he wouldn't be able to satisfy Susanna. Tristan, as usual, spent most of the time riding on horseback, and did not change because of Susanna's appearance. Once, there was a fierce horse in the playground that no one could tame. Everyone gave up, except Tristan, who stayed up all night, and never gave up even if he fell and was injured all over. This unbridled wildness shocked Susanna's heart. Not only Susanna, but also the 13-year-old girl next door, Isabel, has a long-cherished wish in her life to marry Tristan when she grows up. Life in Montana flows peacefully and leisurely. However, the flames of war in Europe began to spread, and the German army had broken through the defense lines of the British and French forces. Samuel, who has always been idealistic, is furious. He wants to join the army to save the country, but Colonel has a deep understanding. War is just a ridiculous game for the powerful, and he does not want his sons to die on the front line. Susanna completely agrees with Colonel, but Samuel insisted on joining the army. Susanna secretly covered her face and cried. When Tristan saw her, she stepped forward and comforted her gently. He promised to protect Samuel. Within a short distance, the air was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Tristan gently caressed Susanna's face. In this family that lacked women since childhood, the brothers did not have much ethical upbringing, which made it difficult for them to suppress some primitive impulses. But then, the two of them were interrupted by Alfred's unbelievable look. October the 14th, 1914. Dear Isabel, Today our sons left home to defend an England they had never seen. I can't stop them. I tried my best to keep the kids away from killing, but now they were out to find it. Only on the battlefield did Samuel begin to feel the cruelty and absurdity of war, but he still didn't want to admit his recklessness. Thanks to the constant protection of Tristan and the scheming Alfred, day and night, Samuel was able to save the day. However, Alfred was also shot in the right leg during a battle, and he was able to retire and return home after recovering from his injury. But at this time, Samuel was still unyielding. He wanted to prove to his father that he could win honor on the battlefield. During a mission, he was eager to perform meritorious deeds, and broke into the poisonous front line to investigate without telling his two brothers. Tristan rides a war horse, and looks for Samuel in a hail of bullets. After some searching, he found that his blind brother was trapped in the iron net. Samuel died in a foreign land with such passion in his heart. In accordance with Indian tradition, Tristan reluctantly dug out Samuel's heart in order to pay homage to Samuel's soul. Tristan sneaked into the enemy camp overnight. At this time, he transformed into a beast, waiting for an opportunity to lurk and strike quickly. Then, cut off the enemy's scalp. The next day Tristan returned with more than a dozen scalps, bleeding like a god of death. He could have been promoted for his meritorious service in killing the enemy, but Tristan did not receive the reward because his purpose of going to the battlefield was to protect Samuel. Tristan disappeared, and Alfred returned home alone with Samuel's heart. The family buried Samuel on his favorite hillside. Samuel died, and Susanna wanted to take the train back to Boston the next day, but due to the heavy snow and wind, Colonel asked Susanna to wait until spring before leaving. She felt the house was too empty. However, it was during that winter that Alfred, who was already very attracted to Susanna, fell hopelessly in love with him. In order to respect Samuel, Alfred expressed his love to Susanna at the tomb, but Susanna declined Alfred. Winter turned to spring, and Tristan finally came back. Susanna stared at Tristan through the gauze curtain. Alfred finally understood why Susanna rejected him. After a period of exile, Tristan finally had the courage to face Samuel's grave, but he still felt guilty, and cried bitterly for his powerlessness. During dinner, Alfred became jealous and taunted Tristan. "Did you enjoy riding horses today?" Tristan left the table angrily, and Susanna chased after him. The two painful souls clung to each other. That night they were sentimental and comforted each other. Early the next morning, Alfred felt resentful and even blurted out that he thought Tristan deliberately did not save Samuel on the battlefield. Tristan was furious and almost fought with Alfred. Since then, the two brothers parted ways due to dissatisfaction. The sad Alfred went to a big city to develop. With his shrewd mind and sophisticated handling, his career flourished. However, late at night, he would also be in agony because of his brother's antagonism and the pain of longing for Susanna. Tristan and Susanna stayed at the ranch and lived a carefree life. It would be a blessing if they could both be happy, but no matter how much time goes by, Tristan still cannot escape the shadow of failing to save Samuel. While grazing, Tristan encountered a calf that was entangled in a barbed wire fence. He wanted to save it, but it was too late. This bloody scene once again brought back painful memories of the battlefield. Finally, in order to relieve the pain of the calf, Tristan shot it to death. This strange association and suggestion is no accident to Tristan. When Susanna was chatting, she also mentioned that if she gave birth to a son in the future, she would be called Samuel, and if she gave birth to a daughter, she would be called Isabel. Tristan was deeply tortured, and his temper became increasingly violent. Until that day, Pet said that a bear appeared in the pasture. Tristan quickly set off and tracked the grizzly bear. He was about to reload and aim, but Tristan hesitated for a long time, and still didn't fire. Pet said that the elders of the tribe once said, "When humans and beasts bleed each other, they will become one." Tristan heard the voice of the grizzly bear in his heart, which was roaring quietly, "If you don't tame it, it will never settle down." The next day, Tristan packed his bags and prepared to travel again. Everyone knows his pain and no one stops him. Only Susanna asked, "If I get pregnant, will you leave?" Tristan mounted the horse without hesitation. Susanna told Tristan, "I will wait for you forever." On that bleak autumn morning, Tristan rode away. The girl next door, Isabel, ran to see him off, her eyes clear and firm. She firmly believes that Tristan will come back. Tristan embarked on the road of wandering, driving a sailboat to wander aimlessly between the stars and the sea, exiled his soul, bathed in mountain springs, and broke into primitive tribes. And Susanna, who was waiting at home, was like experiencing a life sentence. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The winter seemed to be endless, and every letter she sent was lost. No news from Tristan, until one day, Tristan felt that his soul had fallen into the abyss and could never go back. He sent Susanna a letter, "It's over between us. Treat me as dead." Susanna was heartbroken, At this moment, Alfred returned to his hometown. He came to inform his father that he was about to run for Congress, but Colonel scolded his son for his stupidity, and Alfred left helplessly. Before leaving, he found Susanna crying sadly, and Alfred comforted her distressedly. This scene was caught by Colonel. Colonel angrily said, "She will be your sister-in-law." Alfred was furious, thinking that his father had always been partial to Tristan. He even blamed Tristan's ulterior motives for Samuel's death that year. The father and son had a big quarrel. After Alfred left, Colonel's hair turned white overnight, but Tristan still hasn't come back. No news. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but Pet believed that Tristan was not dead, because deep in the forest, he would hear the roar of the injured grizzly bear from time to time. Finally, one day, Tristan returned to the Montana prairie after many years of absence, with a group of horses. Tristan has become much calmer after experiencing many vicissitudes of life. At this time, Colonel was paralyzed by a stroke and could not speak. Tristan felt guilty, but Colonel was extremely happy. Susanna, who had given up her heart a few years ago, married Alfred, and Tristan murmured to himself, "That's how it should be." When they met again, Susanna couldn't help but thought, "It's too far." Tristan. After this meeting, Tristan chose don't bother her anymore. He seemed to accept everything calmly. Pet said, the wounded grizzly bear in Tristan's heart fell asleep, so he was able to withdraw from the world and live a peaceful life. After many years of separation, little Isabel has grown up. She was still waiting only for Tristan. The two got married naturally, and even Tristan's mother returned to Montana, where she had been away for many years, to attend the wedding. Sending grace and blessings to little Isabel. Everything was so peaceful, beautiful, and worldly. After marriage, Isabel gave birth to a boy, Tristan named Samuel. At that time, in order to rebuild after the war, the government enacted the Prohibition Act. In order to make money to support his family, Tristan started a business of smuggling private liquor. However, this opportunity to make a fortune has touched the capitalist's cake. Tristan received a warning from the Copper brothers, and for his brother's sake, Tristan's life was spared. One day not long after, Tristan and Alfred reunited after a long separation, and the two brothers shook hands and made peace. Time seemed to smooth out all the wrinkles between them. At this time, Tristan had a son and a daughter. His son was named Samuel, and his daughter was named Isabel. Susanna had mixed feelings and couldn't help crying. Then Tristan went to sell wine again. His nature of ignoring rules had improved, but it still couldn't be eradicated. On the way home, the Copper brothers and police officers blocked Tristan's path. A police officer took out his submachine gun and fired at the nearby cliff. They wanted to scare Tristan, but the shrapnel took away Isabel's life. The beast inside Tristan was awakened again. The beast was subdued, Tristan's face was distorted, and the feeling of powerlessness attacked him more intensely. After Isabel's death, the policeman beaten by Tristan was also seriously injured and disabled. But after all, it was Tristan who committed the crime first, and Isabel's accident happened later. In addition, the Copper brothers had a strong background, and the murderer was not punished. Alfred returns home to attend Isabel's funeral. His father hates his inaction and does not want to see him. Alfred advised Tristan to settle the matter, and he did everything he could to smoothen the relationship. As long as Tristan pleads guilty, he will be fine in just half a month in prison. Tristan had no objections and calmly accepted Alfred's suggestion. While serving her sentence in prison, Susanna came to visit. Her love for Tristan was still strong. She had thought that Tristan would never come back, and she never expected that Tristan would marry Isabel. Susanna hated the trick of fate. She even imagined that she would be the child's mother as long as Isabel died. She had this expectation for Samuel when he rushed to the front line of the war. It is incredible that these curses have come true one by one. Tristan vehemently denied Susanna's idea. The deaths of Samuel and Isabel had nothing to do with her. At this point, Tristan had to admit that he might also have such thoughts deep in his heart. After being released from prison, Tristan began a revenge plan. The reason why he was willing to go to jail was just to make his enemies relax their vigilance. In the sense of ancient rituals, Tristan was like a cornered beast, hunting down the prey that surrounded him. At the same time, Susanna is also struggling between morality and nature, compromise and betrayal, fruitless waiting and unwillingness to fate. Now she could no longer appease the beast in her heart, and ended her tormented life with regret. Alfred sent Susanna back to the grassland. He had to admit that Tristan won Susanna, but he still didn't understand. He obeyed all the rules, whether they were divine, human, moral or legal. But why did he lose? Tristan does whatever he wants and never follows the rules, but he wins everything. Father, Samuel and Susanna, they all loved Tristy more than they loved him. Tristan was speechless. Even now, looking at that youthful photo, he began to wonder if he had been cursed. Why do all the people who love him leave him? But his father screamed soberly, There's no curse on Tristan, but Tristan was still afraid. He packed up his luggage and fled again. But as soon as he walked out of the house, his life-threatening enemies came to the door. Tristan asked to take the child to the woods. Don't let the child see it. At this time, Colonel limped out. A few people didn't care about this old man, with a stroke and slanted eyes. However, it turns out that even if the sword is rusty, it can still kill people. Alfred's shot eliminated the resentment between brothers and reduced the gap between father and son. His father burst into tears and hugged Alfred tightly, as if he was hugging him that night many years ago, when father and son were in the same room together. Tristan then entrusted the children to Alfred, and he chose exile again. Pet once said that Tristan would not live long, but he was wrong. Everyone who loved Tristan died young, but only Tristan lived to be 100 years old. Tristan died in 1963, and his tombstone remains unmarked. But what does it matter? There is no terror in the dangers in life. There is no sorrow and indignation in the loneliness in life. There is no regret in the indulgence in life. The pain in life has nothing to do with being buried. The key is, even in the dark night, when no one is paying attention. Have you ever burned emotionally, just like the soul that refuses to rest, in order to thank you for this short period of time? Legends of the Fall is a work directed by Edward Zwick and released in 1994. Regarding this movie, many people may have heard it first. Its soundtrack is more famous than the movie itself, but to be honest, the more movies are narrated, the more I like this kind of classic old movie. There are always new ideas when you watch it often, and you are always moved when you watch it often. When you watch it at different ages, you will see completely different things. Following the music, we witnessed each vivid character, from birth to growth, from youth to adulthood, from surging to death, innocence, exploration, passion, restlessness, ecstasy, great sadness, fear, peace, happiness, loneliness, struggle, silence. We will eventually lose this short life. Everyone has tortured themselves in the middle of the night. What am I pursuing in this life? Is what we hear the real voice in our hearts? If so, then we should be free from worries and peaceful. But what are we suffering from? What are we confused about? What are we regretting? What are we afraid of? If a person lives completely according to his heart, he will either become a madman or a legend. Perhaps the root of the world's suffering lies in the inability to live completely in accordance with the inner voice. Morals and rules go to great lengths to suppress lust and anger. There is a beast deep within each of us, and if we cannot tame it, we will never find peace. For most people, because they are afraid of being isolated from the world, they can only live according to the world instead of living according to their hearts. If your heart is not at peace, if there is death in your eyes, it is because your life is contrary to your original intention. I love every character in this movie. They are either brave and fearless idealists, shrewd and passionate pragmatists, or primitive wise men who have insight into everything, or they are victims who are tricked by fate, or they are infatuated adherents who never change. And Tristan is a romantic and unruly deviant. It is true that for ordinary people, they either despise such people or worship such people. But no matter what, we can't become such a person. The only way to gain inner peace may be to remind ourselves to some extent, in the dark night when no one is watching, burn emotionally at least once, and become a vulgar person who occasionally listens to his heart. This is HKY Movie. Looking forward to meeting you again in the next movie.